Nobody remembered who built the door. That was the first thing Archivist Molu told every visitor, all four of his arms spreading wide, as if to embrace the mystery itself. The second thing he told them was simpler. Nobody had ever opened it either. The young diplomats standing before him shifted nervously. They were Gravathi, tall and thin, their silver skin catching the dim light of the observation deck. Behind the thick glass wall, the vault sat in its sealed chamber like a sleeping god. It looked almost ordinary. A door of black metal, 12 feet high, set into a frame of something that was not quite stone. No handle, no queyole, no visible mechanism of any kind. 12,000 years, Molu continued, his voice carrying the weight of a historian who had spent his entire life studying failure. That is how long this door has existed. For 1,000 years since we found it on the surface of the husk and brought it here for study. In that time, 147 species have tried to open it. One of the diplomats raised a hand, and none succeeded. Molu's laugh was dry and tired. The Villani tried plasma cutters that could slice through starship hulls. The door absorbed the energy. The Korath brought quantum drills designed to phase through solid matter. The door remained solid. The endless, those ancient beings who exist partially outside of time itself, spent 3 centuries attempting to simply wait for it to decay. The door did not age. He walked closer to the glass, pressing one of his hands against it. His reflection stared back at him with tired eyes. The Dreeth, my own people, bankrupted an entire colony trying to build a device specifically designed to crack this vault. 20 million credits. 17 years of research. The device worked perfectly. The door simply refused to acknowledge it existed. The diplomats exchanged glances. One of them, braver than the others, asked the question that everyone always asked. Then why is the station still here? Hope, Mola said. Stubbornness. Pride. Take your pick. The Galactic Compact maintains this station as a monument to the greatest unsolved mystery in known space. And perhaps, if we're being honest, as a monument to our collective failure. He led them away from the observation deck, down a corridor that had seen better days. Paint peeled from the walls. Several lights flickered with the desperation of things that had been repaired too many times. Station quiet. 7 was not a prestigious posting. They passed a human on his knees in the corridor. His upper body disappeared into an open maintenance panel. Wires hung around him like mechanical vines. He was humming something to himself, a tune that none of the aliens recognized. Molu barely glanced at him. Our maintenance technician, recently transferred. The human pulled himself out of the panel as they passed, wiping his hands on his already dirty uniform. His name tag read D. Reeves. He was neither young nor old, neither remarkable nor forgettable. The kind of person you might see 1,000 times and never truly notice. Danny Reeves watched the tour group disappear around the corner, then turned his attention back to the faulty wiring. But his mind was elsewhere. It had been elsewhere ever since he arrived on this station 3 weeks ago and first saw the door that he had read the files. Every species in the galaxy had thrown their greatest minds, their most powerful weapons, their most advanced technology at that door. They had treated it like an enemy to be conquered, a puzzle to be solved, a god to be appeased. But Danny had noticed something during his first cleaning shift in the observation deck. Something small, something that everyone else had apparently been too busy being impressive to see. The door had hinges, not obvious ones. Not the kind you would notice if you were busy shooting plasma at it or trying to bend reality around it. But hinges nonetheless, hidden in a frame, designed for the door to swing outward, which meant the door was meant to be opened. It was not a wall pretending to be an entrance. It was an actual door. And doors, in Danny's experience, open when you found the right way to ask. He finished his repairs, closed the panel, and headed back to his quarters. On his desk sat a worn toolkit that had belonged to his father. Beside it, a datapad displayed 4,000 years of failed attempts. Danny pulled up a chair and started reading from the beginning. Somewhere in all those failures, there had to be a pattern. And patterns, unlike ancient mysteries, were something Danny understood very well. The station archives contained 6 million hours of recorded footage. Danny had watched 47 hours of it in the past week, and he had started to notice something that no one else seemed to care about. The door reacted differently to different species. When the Villani approached with their plasma cutters, the door had glowed faintly before absorbing the energy. When the Korath tried their quantum drills, the surface had rippled like water. When the Endless simply stood before it and waited, the door had done something remarkable. It had waited back, but no one had noticed because no one was looking for reactions. They were looking for results. "You are spending an unusual amount of time in the archives," said Lyra. Danny looked up from his datapad. The station AI manifested as a soft blue light in the ceiling corner, pulsing gently when she spoke. Lyra was old, perhaps the oldest AI still in active service. She had been assigned to the station when it first opened, back when people still believed the door would be cracked within a decade. "Just curious," Danny said. "Curiosity is common among new arrivals. It usually fades within the first month. How many humans have been posted here before me?" The light flickered as Lyra searched her records. 3. All maintenance staff. None stayed longer than their assigned rotation. Humans find the station. She paused, searching for the right word. Boring. Danny smiled at that. Fair enough. He returned to his research. The archives contained detailed reports from hundreds of failed attempts. But Danny was more interested in the ones that had come close. Not close to opening the door, but close to something else. Close to contact point 700 years ago, a Mithrani philosopher had approached the door alone, without tools or weapons. She had simply talked to it. For 6 hours, she had spoken about her life, her fears, her hopes for her people. The door had not opened, but the sensors had recorded a faint vibration in its surface. The only time in 4,000 years that the door had responded without being attacked first. The philosopher had been dismissed as a failure, her report buried in the archives along with all the others. But Danny kept coming back to it. 2 days later, during his night shift, he made his way to the vault chamber. The room was empty. Security had been reduced to almost nothing over the centuries since nothing had ever happened. Danny stood before the observation glass, looking at the door that had defeated civilizations. The IT looked tired. That was a strange thought, and Danny knew it. Doors did not get tired, but standing there in the dim light, looking at something that had existed for 12,000 years and watched countless beings throw themselves against it, Danny could not shake the feeling he found a manual release for the safety barrier. It had been installed millennia ago to let researchers enter the chamber, though no one had used it in centuries. The mechanism was stiff but functional. Danny stepped into the chamber. The door was larger up close, taller. The black metal seemed to swallow the light rather than reflect it. But Danny did not feel fear. He felt something closer to recognition, like meeting someone you had heard about your whole life, that he did not try to touch it. Not yet. Instead, he walked slowly around the frame, examining the hinges he had spotted from the observation deck. They were real, solid, functional. "You are designed to open," Danny said quietly. "So why do you not?" The door did not answer, but something in the air changed. A stillness that had not been there before. Danny crouched down and looked at the base of the frame. There was no visible gap between the door and the floor. But as he studied it, he noticed something odd. Scratch marks, thousands of them, layered over each other, covering the floor in front of the door in a perfect arc. The door had opened before. Many times. The scratches proved it, but not for any of the species that had come seeking entry. Not for 4,000 years of brilliant minds and overwhelming force. The door was not locked. It was waiting. Danny stood up slowly, his mind working through the implications. Every species had approached this door as a problem to be solved, an obstacle to be overcome, a challenge to be conquered. They had come with power and intelligence and determination. None of them had simply asked. He pulled out his worn toolkit and sat down cross-legged on the cold floor, studying the door the way he would study any mechanism that refused to work. "All right," he said to the empty room. "Let us figure this out together." 3 weeks of study had taught Danny one important thing. The door was not a test of power. It was a test of attitude. Every species that approached had done so with the same basic assumption. They believed they deserved to enter. They were smart enough, strong enough, Ancient enough, powerful enough. They had earned the right to know what was inside. The door disagreed. IT was late in the station night when Danny made his way to the vault chamber for the last time. The corridors were empty. Lyra had stopped commenting on his unusual behavior days ago. Either she had lost interest, or she was simply watching to see what would happen. Danny carried only his toolkit and a small flashlight. No weapons, no scanners, no equipment designed to force or trick his way inside. Just the basic tools of a maintenance worker who had spent his life fixing things that other people had given up on. He entered the chamber and stood before the door. "Okay," he said, "I have been thinking about this, and I want you to know that I am not here to conquer you. I'm not here to prove anything. I'm just curious." The door remained silent. The dark metal reflected nothing. Everyone who has come here before treated you like a problem. Something to be solved. Something to be defeated. Danny moved closer, his voice casual, conversational. "But you're just a door. A very old door that has been dealing with a lot of aggressive visitors, but still just a door." He reached the frame and ran his fingers along the edge. The metal was cool, but not cold. It almost felt alive under his touch. "I fix things for a living. Machines, mostly. And the first rule of fixing anything is to understand what it is supposed to do. Doors are supposed to open. That is their whole purpose. So if you're not opening, there are only two possibilities. Either you cannot, or you will not." Danny crouched down and examined the base of the frame again. The scratch marks were still there, thousands of tiny grooves worn into the floor over countless openings and closings. "You can open. The evidence is right here," which means you are choosing not to. And that means you are waiting for something. He stood up and looked at the door directly. Not with awe, not with fear, not with the desperate hunger of someone who needed to prove themselves worthy. Just the patient attention of a man examining a stuck mechanism. "What are you waiting for?" Nothing happened. Danny had not expected anything to happen, but he was not finished. "I notice you have hinges," he continued. "Hidden ones, but they are there. You swing outward, which means you were designed to welcome people in, not keep them out. A door that opens inward is defensive. A door that opens outward is inviting." He took a step back and studied the frame. The not-quite-stone material had faint markings on it, worn almost invisible by time. He had noticed them during his earlier visits, but had not paid much attention. Now he looked closer. They were not words, not symbols. They were pictures, simple drawings, almost childlike in their execution. Figures approaching the door. Figures speaking. Figures walking through instructions. "You have been telling everyone how to open you this whole time," Danny said slowly. But no one looked because they were too busy trying to force their way in. He reached out and placed his palm flat against the center of the door. Not pushing, not demanding, just touching. "May I come in?" For a long moment, nothing happened. Danny kept his hand in place, waiting without expectation. He had asked. If the answer was no, he would accept it. He was not entitled to anything. Then the door moved. A key swung outward slowly, silently, on hinges that had not moved in 12,000 years. The dark metal caught the chamber lights as it opened, revealing a darkness beyond that seemed to breathe with ancient purpose. Danny stood frozen. Not from fear, from simple surprise. "Huh," he said quietly. It worked. Behind him, alarms began to sound throughout the station. Sensors that had been waiting for 4,000 years suddenly screamed to life. Lights flashed. Automated systems that had never been triggered activated all at once. Danny ignored all of it. He was staring at the opening before him, at the soft light beginning to glow from somewhere inside. At the end of an impossible mystery, he stepped through the door. The inside of the vault was impossible. Danny knew this because he had seen the external measurements. The chamber should have been no larger than a modest storage room. Instead, he stood in a space that stretched further than his flashlight could reach. Light came from everywhere and nowhere. It rose from the floor like morning mist, drifted down from above like gentle snow, and pulsed softly from the walls in colors that had no names. The air tasted old but clean, like rain falling on ancient stone. Danny walked forward slowly. His footsteps made no sound. The light moved around him as if curious, examining this strange creature that had found its way inside. "You are not what I expected." The voice came from everywhere at once. It was neither male nor female, neither young nor old. It spoke in concepts more than words, and somehow Danny understood perfectly. "I did not know what to expect," Danny replied. "I was just curious." The light gathered in front of him, slowly taking shape. Not a body exactly, more like the suggestion of a presence, a form made of intention rather than matter. "I am the keeper," the presence said. "I have waited here since the door was sealed. I have watched 147 species attempt entry. You are the first to simply ask." Danny considered this. That seems like a pretty low bar. The keeper's form rippled, and Danny got the distinct impression that it was amused. "You would think so. Yet here we are." The light expanded, and suddenly Danny could see further into the vault. There were objects here, structures, things that his mind struggled to process. Star maps drawn in living light. Technology that seemed to grow rather than be built. Knowledge stored in crystals that hummed with quiet power. "What is all this?" Danny asked. "The legacy of my creators. The architects, as they called themselves. They existed before the current age of the galaxy, before the species you know today had learned to walk upright. They built wonders that would take your breath away and committed horrors that would break your heart." The keeper moved through the vault, and Danny followed. Each step revealed new marvels. When they realized their time was ending, they faced a choice. They could destroy their knowledge, ensuring it would never be misused, or they could preserve it, hoping that someday the right kind of mind would find it. And the door was the test, Danny said. Yes, not a test of intelligence or power. Those qualities had led the architects to their own destruction. The door was designed to respond to something rarer: humility, curiosity without entitlement, the willingness to ask rather than demand. Danny stopped in front of a structure that looked like a tree made of light. Branches spread outward, each one ending in a point of brilliance. A star map, he realized, but not of any region he recognized. What is this? Worlds that your galactic compact has never found. Some empty and ready for settlement. Some holding treasures beyond imagination. Some containing dangers that should be left undisturbed. The keeper's form shifted again, becoming more focused. There is also a warning. The architects did not die naturally. They were destroyed by an enemy that still exists, sleeping in the dark between galaxies. The knowledge here includes everything they learned about that enemy and the weapons they developed to fight it. Danny felt cold for the first time since entering the vault. Why give this to anyone if it is so dangerous? Because the enemy will wake eventually. It always does. And when it does, the galaxy will need defenders who approach problems with wisdom rather than arrogance. The keeper came closer, and Danny felt its attention like warmth on his skin. The architects searched for 12,000 years before sealing this vault. They tested countless species, hoping to find someone worthy of inheriting their knowledge. None passed. Not one in 12 millennia thought to simply ask permission. Until now, Danny said quietly. Until now, the keeper's form began to fade, spreading back into the ambient light. The vault is open. What happens next is no longer my decision. But I would offer one piece of advice. Danny waited. The galaxy is about to become very interested in you, Danny Reeves. They will want to know how a maintenance worker accomplished what their greatest minds could not. Some will worship you. Others will fear you. Most will want to use you. What should I do? The keeper's voice was fading now, becoming part of the light itself. The same thing you did with the door. Do not try to be impressive. Just be honest. Then the presence was gone, and Danny stood alone in the vault of the architects, surrounded by the inheritance of a dead civilization. Outside, he could hear running footsteps and shouting voices. His quiet life was over. 17 weapons pointed at Danny when he stepped out of the vault. He counted them automatically. The way a man counts steps on a staircase he has climbed too many times. Station Commander Pell stood at the front of the security team, her silver Gravathi skin pale with shock. Behind her, Archivist Molu had all 4 hands pressed against his face, as if trying to hold his own head together. "Step away from the door," Pell ordered. Her voice cracked on the last word. Danny raised his hand slowly. Okay, but I should tell you, the door is not going to hurt anyone. It never was. You opened it. Mola's voice was barely a whisper. For 1,000 years. 147 species. And you just walked in. I asked permission first, Danny said. That seemed to be the part everyone was missing. The communication system crackled to life. Lyra's calm voice filled the chamber. Commander, I am receiving priority transmissions from 17 different governments. The Villani High Council, the Korath Collective, the Dreeth Historical Authority, all of them demanding to know what has happened. Pell closed her eyes. How do they know already? The vault's opening triggered automated signals that were placed throughout the station 4,000 years ago. The entire Galactic Compact was notified the moment the door moved. Of course it did, Pell muttered. She looked at Danny with an expression caught somewhere between anger and amazement. Do you have any idea what you have done? I fixed a stuck door, Danny said. I'm good at that. The next 3 days were chaos. Ships arrived by the dozen, then by the hundred. Diplomats, scientists, religious leaders, military commanders. The quiet station that no one had cared about for centuries suddenly became the most important location in known space. Danny was questioned for 18 hours straight by a rotating panel of officials from every major species. They asked the same questions over and over. How did you know? What technique did you use? What technology did you employ? Can it be replicated? His answers remained the same. I did not know. I did not use any technique. I had no technology. I just asked. No one believed him. You must have done something, insisted a Villani scientist, her scales flushed dark with frustration. Our plasma cutters operate at temperatures that can melt starship armor. Your entire species has only been traveling between stars for 200 years. How can you possibly have succeeded where we failed? Danny shrugged. Maybe that is exactly why. Archivist Molu found him during a brief break in the questioning, sitting alone in a maintenance corridor. The historian lowered himself to the floor beside Danny, his 4 arms wrapped around his knees. I've spent my entire life studying that door, Molu said quietly. I wrote books about its mystery. I became the foremost expert on its history. And in all that time, I never once thought to simply ask if it would open. You were not supposed to, Danny said. That was the whole point. The door was designed to reject anyone who thought they deserved to enter. And you did not think you deserved it. Danny laughed softly. I'm a maintenance worker. I fix broken things and unclog drains. I was not trying to prove I was worthy of anything. I was just curious about a door that did not open. Molu was silent for a long moment. The Dreeth have a word for what you did. We call it walking small. It means approaching the universe without arrogance. We teach it to our children, but we do not practice it ourselves. Not when it matters. Humans have a similar concept, Danny said. We call it not being a jerk about things. Despite everything, Mola laughed. It was a strange sound like wind through hollow tubes, but it was genuine. The assembly hall of the Galactic Compact had never been this full. Representatives from every known species filled the circular chamber, their attention focused on the small human standing at the central podium. Danny had refused the formal robes they offered him. He stood in his maintenance uniform, slightly wrinkled, his toolkit still hanging from his belt. Several diplomats had objected to this. Danny had ignored them. You have asked me to explain how I opened the vault, he began. His voice was steady but quiet. The chamber's acoustics carried it to every corner. The answer is simple. I did not try to open it. I asked if it would open for me. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. A Korath delegate raised a limb. That cannot be the entire explanation. We employed our finest minds. We used technology that can reshape matter at the quantum level. That was the problem, Danny said. You approached the door as a challenge to overcome, something to defeat. The door was not looking for someone powerful. It was looking for someone who did not assume they had the right to enter. The Korath delegate fell silent. The architects who built that vault were afraid, Danny continued. They had created wonders, but they had also used their knowledge to cause terrible harm. When they realized their civilization was ending, they wanted to pass their legacy to someone who would use it wisely. Someone humble enough to ask instead of demand. He paused, looking around the chamber. For 12,000 years, the door waited. Every species that approached believed they deserved what was inside. Scientists believed their intelligence earned them entry. Warriors believed their strength gave them the right. Priests believed their faith made them worthy. None of them thought to simply knock. A Villani representative leaned forward. And humans are different? Your species is young, inexperienced. By any measure, you should be the least qualified to inherit such knowledge. Danny smiled slightly. Maybe that is exactly why. We have not been around long enough to think we deserve anything. We're still figuring things out, still asking questions instead of assuming we know the answers. The chamber fell quiet. It was Archivist Molu who spoke next, his voice carrying from the Dreeth section. The vault contains more than just technology. There is a warning about an enemy that destroyed the architects. And there are other vaults scattered across the galaxy, each requiring a different forgotten virtue to open. This caused an uproar. Dozens of delegates began speaking at once. Danny waited for the noise to settle. The keeper explained this to me, he said when he could be heard again. The architects left multiple vaults, each testing for something different. Humility was just the first. There are others. Patience, compassion, courage without aggression. The qualities they believed would create good inheritors of their legacy. And you are offering to help find them. Commander Pell asked from her position near the door. Danny shook his head. I'm offering to help, but not because I think I am special. Any species could have opened that first vault if they had approached it differently. The same will be true of the others. He stepped away from the podium. The architects did not choose humanity. They chose a mindset, an approach. They wanted partners, not conquerors. The vault is open to everyone now. What matters is what we do with what is inside. The session continued for hours after that. Debates about territory, access rights, research protocols. The usual political complications that followed any major discovery. Danny sat quietly through most of it, answering questions when asked but offering no opinions on matters beyond his understanding. Finally, as the assembly began to wind down, the keeper appeared. The light materialized in the center of the chamber, drawing gasps from the assembled delegates. It was smaller than it had been in the vault, more contained, but unmistakably present. The vault has chosen its inheritor, the keeper said. Not a species, a philosophy. Those who approach the unknown with curiosity rather than entitlement will always find doors opening before them. Then it turned to Danny, and something small appeared in the air before him. A device no larger than his palm, glowing with soft inner light. For you, the keeper said. A gift for the one who asked instead of demanded. Danny took it carefully. He did not ask what it was. He would figure that out later. The keeper faded, and the assembly erupted into chaos again. But Danny was already walking toward the exit. The small device warm in his hand. 3 months later, he was back on Station Quiet 7, fixing an air scrubber that had been malfunctioning for weeks. The galaxy had reorganized itself around the vault's discovery, but that was not his concern. He was a maintenance worker. He fixed things. The small device sat on his desk, still unexplored. He would get to it eventually. There was no rush. Some doors opened when you simply asked. Others opened when you were patient enough to wait. Danny had learned not to force either one.